Today in the bunker, we're going to talk about summer camp. The Soviets had basically commie Boy Scouts called Young Pioneers, and they had youth camps set up all across the Soviet Union. And the one that's in the exclusion zone was known as Emerald. So we're going to build one of those bunkhouses, and as a start of a project, I'm going to build a fairly good portion of the camp for a bandit hideout. So if you go on Google and look up Emerald Summer Camp or Chernobyl Summer Camp, you can find a lot of really neat images of the bunkhouses and other buildings that were there prior to the recent wildfires. Apparently, pretty much all or most all of what was there is now gone or destroyed, thanks to some idiot who wanted to set fires because stalker. But anyway, I made some little sketches of various buildings, the water tower that looks kind of like a stick grenade, and took some notes on color and whatnot, and then did a bit of laying out on graph paper, as I'm wont to do, and figured out through trial and error. I adjusted, these turned into as-builts because a lot of that got modified as I went. I figured out what fit and didn't fit. So I then took those measurements and laid them out on a piece of foam core, and I'm using white foam core because I happened to find a stash of it I didn't even remember that I had, so I wanted to use it up. But anyway, let's get started. One of the more notable features of the little bunkhouses is the fact that they have a porch that is glassed in with windows. They're actually 9-pane windows because I'm sad and I sat and counted them in the photographs. Now I didn't want to scratch build that because I would be here until like next year doing that because I'm really slow at that sort of thing. So I went to the hardware store and found, well, first off I threw my building down. I threw it on the ground and found some of this good stuff. This is referred to as hardware cloth, even though it's not cloth. But this is the 1/4 inch, it's just a 1/4 inch metal mesh. It also comes in 1/8 inch and 1/2 inch. The 1/2 inch stuff we'll be seeing in the future on this channel because we're going to do some Necromunda things and some bigger industrial stuff in 28mm, so that'll come in handy there. But in the meantime, we're going to cut some of this out and make ourselves some windows. Alright, well first I should note, I could not find my end cutters, of course. I have probably 2 very adequate sets, can't find them. EMT shears work in a pinch. So you get this, you have to flatten it out a little bit, because it comes rolled up. And we'll perfect that a little bit. And these pieces here, on the top and the bottom, we're going to leave in place because we want that to push into the foam core and it'll help hold that. Alright, so we will take our pliers and just straighten those out. And we'll fix the rest of that. Okay, so we've got that. We're going to leave the ends too because they're going to go into foam core. So to match that window setup, we're going to bend these. So the first one we're going to come over 3 and then we'll make a bend. And you also got to figure out, this has an orientation. There's wires on one side going one way and the other side going the other way. So if you want your vertical or horizontal orientation to be the primary one, now is the time to figure it out before you bend it. Ask me how I know. So I did it with the vertical well, actually those are horizontal, being the outside primary focus. So we're going to bend that and try to get as straight as you can. Okay, and then we're going to go across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's basically 2 inches. And bend that again. And again, trying to make a nice 90-degree bend. And it's not going to be probably super precise. I did muck about originally with separate window pieces, and this was just so much easier. It's also a lot stronger for the final build. So let's cut out some foam core bits and stick that together. Okay, so let's take our utility knife and get that locked in place. Get ourselves a straight edge. Put it along there. And in a previous video, a viewer asked, hey, how do you make straight cuts? Practice. I do have in the back of my mind cogs turning, thinking about how to make something that would be easy to fabricate, cheap, and would help you make straight cuts at home. So, who knows? Maybe I'll come up with something. But just try to make them as straight as you can. They don't have to be perfect, but that's not too bad. So, all right, we're going to cut all these other bits out and be right back. All right, so probably the most stable way to do this would be to glue it to the base as we go. So I did not do that on this. I built this a little bit different. This was an experiment in trying to go a little faster. So we'll see what it does. I'm also going to use hot glue on this where I did not before. So let's give it a shot. And this is all going to get wood siding over it, so if the glue is a little gooey and sticks out, not a big deal. We'll trim it off and cover it with wood. You'll note that's also why I marked these pieces, so I would know where they go. So otherwise I'd never remember. Okay, well, right off the bat, I didn't cut that very well. Because that does not line up. That is about 1 millimeter too high. I left some of that on there and didn't cut it well. So, let me fix that. I'll be right back. Okay, that's better. Sometimes it's a good idea to dry fit these things before you just slap glue on them and shove them together. I know that's crazy talk, but alright, we'll keep going. Sometimes my channel could be more of a cautionary tale than any sort of educational exercise. I will smear a little hot glue on there, and we will put that together. Let's see how this fits. That should go. I may need to tweak it a little as far as where the little spikes end up. Okay, it's a tad fiddly, but you'll get it. And then immediately undo it like I just did. Alright. kind of straight. I may have bent these at the wrong place. Let's try that again. Okay, well, it can make a difference depending on how you bend these, if you're bending on the inside or the outside of a particular line. So keep that in mind. It's good to do a test one of these. Of course, if you do like I do, you'll do a test one, then you'll completely ignore what you did on the test and do it a different way. So we'll keep adding pieces and be back. Alright, so we got the main walls up fairly square. The window pieces seem to fit fairly well. I think I bent them slightly different on that one because they seem to be inside a little more, back in. But we can work with what we got. Okay, you can see I made an error in measurement, but we have enough offcuts, we can fix that. Alright, there's all the primary walls up and glued together, and again it's fairly square. It has a tendency to be sort of bent in. We'll put an internal wall in there and that'll stretch it and kind of straighten that out, so that'll help a little bit, kind of like how that is. Alright, so we've cut a middle wall piece that'll fit fairly snug in there and kind of flex that out a little bit and help brace that. So I'm going to put a door in the middle of it and we'll glue it in place. Alright, so we've got that middle wall in. I just put dab of glue on the bottom and up at the top of each corner just to kind of hold it in place. And that squares it up a little bit. So let's get started on the siding. Alright, so we've got this assembled, and what we're going to do now is put the trim on it. And I'm going to put a piece along the bottom, a straighter piece than that. Obviously cut that to length. Put a corresponding piece along the top, and then we'll fill in along the sides, and like I did on the other one, you can see there's the two pieces. We're going to use some bits of matchstick to make that part of the window frame. On the back, I left off the top piece just for sanity because you can just glue these on and then cut them to fit. It's a lot easier. And doesn't really take away from the aesthetic of the building. So, alright, so let's put some of that on and see what we get. We're also going to seal the top of all these edges of the foam core so that when we spray paint that, it won't eat that up. And I should point out, when I put this wall in, I forgot to put in the door frame. But since it's inside, not a huge thing. But just to let you know, I did mess that up. So I have cut coffee stir to length with our handy EMT shears, and we are going to just use some PVA because it's fairly magical. We'll lay a little bead on there. We'll take our stick, place it in the correct position, wiggle it just a bit. Wipe off the excess. Okay, and I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I know you can figure that out. So we're going to put some more on, and we'll be back. Alright, so we've got all of the horizontal bits on, so we're going to start with the vertical. And I usually start on the back of these because you can lay it on that face, and it'll help press that down to dry it. And just do a few at a time. Keep your spacing good. And what we're going to do is, once this PVA sets up, we're just going to take the EMT shears and cut it along that roof line. So just make it nice and even. Okay, so that's set up enough that we can go in, and you can see I've done a few already. And you kind of hold that on the back. and then just take those shears, bump the camera, and cut that right along that roof line. And then make sure everybody's straight enough to your liking. Maybe knock some of that excess glue out of there. Alright, so then we'll continue along the faces, and on the front I did vertical here and horizontal here, just again because I got sick of cutting out 19,000 little tiny pieces. So you can do it either way. That's just how I did it. It looks fine, I think. So let's get started on there. And as we go, we're also going to put in the window frames, or the window frame and the door frame to get those ready. Okay, and as before, we just measure these, cut them to fit with your EMT shears. Put a little PVA down, and there we go, just like that. So just continue doing that all the way across. I should note that if you're precise enough and get lucky and get straight enough pieces, you can measure that gap and then pre-cut a bunch of pieces and put them in there. That doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. And when you do the window and the door, I try to have that piece set out a little bit, just so that it'll kind of compensate for the siding being on there. It won't be set too far back in. You can do all the siding and then do that later. I find it easier to fit the siding around that if it's already in place, but yeah, either way works. Okay, so there's the window frame done, and you can kind of see that sticks out just a little bit. So we'll fit some pieces around that and keep going. Okay, and when you fit those, I just kind of hold it up there and figure out about how far in it's going to go. And of course, the top and bottom limit of that you mark with a pencil, and then just take a nice fresh blade on your hobby knife and move all that stuff out of the way. And knock your building over. And then just very carefully get the glue off your blade. Just kind of make a cut. Just indent that a little bit. And then sometimes it helps to put a straight edge on there and then cut between the two pieces you did. And if you do it like I just tried to do it far away, sometimes you kind of hose it up. It's like that. I broke a little piece off. I didn't mean to. Normally I do this very up close. I'm very focused on it. But you can still see that fits right in there. So we're going to go with it. And we're going to do the same thing across there. And the offcuts that we made from these longer pieces are handy to do the shorter pieces, so don't throw them away. Reuse them. Okay, so as you can see, sometimes fitting these in, you need to sort of fill a gap. And the nice thing about these coffee stirrers is if you are careful, they split fairly easily. You may have to score it a few times, although a piece this short, I just laid the blade on there where I wanted it and pushed down and got it to split. But even the really long ones, if you lay a straight edge on there and then score it and do it 2 or 3 times, you can get that to split very neatly. Much like how we did, well, not so much here because I broke it, but still, you can see what I'm talking about. Alright, so there's all of the siding done. And the front, this piece here was a little uneven, so I didn't do the vertical. I did horizontal, just a little bit more strength, kind of even that all up. I was afraid that if I tried to do it the other way, it wouldn't come out. It wouldn't have enough to hold on to over here in the corner. So either way it works. These buildings aren't super precise. And if you don't screw up the front like I did, then you can do it the other way. So we're going to let the glue, I've glued all the edges, we're going to let that dry, and we're going to cut out a roof, and then we'll go ahead and prime everything. One note on the roof, I cut that to size and then measured the middle. And what I'm going to do is just take the razor knife and just score that lightly so that it will cleanly bend and make the correct angle on top. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. It's just scored. It's not, didn't cut to any substantial depth. And then you can just take it and bend it like that. That facilitates a nice clean bend. And you can bend it a little more, get it to where it fits on there nicely. And what I will do to bolster that is to cut out 2 pieces of foam core at this same angle, and we will glue them in there so that this will fit on here nice and snug, and then we'll put our corrugated iron and all that good stuff on it. Alright, so we got our roof put together, our little bolsters in there, hot glued in. I put some PVA on the edges. Normally I would, this mat board, I would treat this with sanding sealer on both sides. What I'm going to do is just go ahead and paint it on both sides, then I will apply the corrugated paper, and then I'll prime that paper, which is kind of an extra step, but it's quicker than putting the sanding sealer on and dealing with all that stuff. So we'll just get this knocked out as quick as we can, because it should work fine. I prefer the sanding sealer because it's more durable, but the paint should be no problem. And especially if that's all you have, to go with it. I also just realized I hadn't put the supports in for the windows, so I'm going to cut those and glue them in place also. I should have put those on about 3 steps ago, but I wanted to get them on there. I went ahead and super glued them just because it's faster. Yeah, I PVA'd the other ones on the other building, but I put them in there because it really helps, especially from a distance, sell the idea that those are large windows and not like iron bars or something stuck in there. Another optional detail is in the window. I noticed that in the actual buildings they have several styles. Some of them are just bisected this way. Some have the T-shape like we did on the other house that I did for the zone. Others have a centerpiece here and another piece coming off of one side. So you can do these in various different ways, or you could just leave it just open. But I think it looks kind of neat with something in there. Something else I need to build, which I keep forgetting. It's amazing I get any projects done at all. I need to build the door. So I'm going to cut a backing piece that I stuck in there and traced around. I'm going to cut that a little bit wider so that it will glue in from the back. And I'm going to cut some of these stirrer pieces to length, and then I'm going to split them very carefully so that A, I can fit them in there properly, and B, they don't look just like the wall boards, the outer skin of the building, and it gives it more of a door look. And then we'll punch out a piece of cardboard or paperboard with our 1/16 hole punch and make a doorknob. Alright, and there's our door in place. You can see the backing piece we glued in. So it's a little fiddly, but it goes together well and looks really good when it's painted. So let's let that dry a little bit and then we'll go prime it. Alright, another step, there's about 47 of them that I forgot, is the foam inside the window frame. I'm going to very carefully paint that with some Mod Podge and some black paint that are mixed, or you can use PVA is fine. I'm going to also apply it to the metal just to help the paint stick a little bit, because this stuff is really good for that. And if you don't have it, just PVA is fine. That's no problem. So let me put that on, and then everything else should be dry, and we'll be finally ready to prime.